Well, good morning. It's 11 a.m. on the Pacific Coast. Some other time wherever you are, and we appreciate you being here. It's Webinar Wednesday. We're very excited to have you. Today's event is a workshop about webinars, and you know, we started recording a little early, and for those of you that showed up early, awesome. We're gonna kind of share some things about what we're doing, and we're gonna kind of show you the behind the scenes. So the first thing I'm gonna do, which I've never done before, is I'm going to rotate I have 3 displays. On the main display, I currently have what you see, but on my left display, I have something different, and I'm going to rotate it to you. Can you all see it now? Can you see 2 slides and my notes? Raise your hands if that worked. Great. So I'm going to actually run the presentation like this because I think it's only fair that if I'm going to do a presentation about how to run a webinar, I ought to show you how I actually do it. So normally I will see this on my left screen or my right screen. And what's very important about it, and I may switch it back if it gets irritating because of the clock, but one of the things, and I actually can manage the clock. I think I'll take the clock off. So on this one, let's remove the clock. So now we don't have that issue. We still have my presenter notes and we have current slide and next slide. And why I have that on the left and the right is obvious, isn't it? So that I can see where I'm going and what I'm going to prepare for next. I don't normally use presenter notes. I don't tend to need them, but I did today a little bit because I wanted to show you how they work. Now this is Keynote. It is not it's probably not your first choice, but it's very similar to PowerPoint. They work in the same way. They do the same kind of thing. And I prefer it. I'm a Mac user. I like the way it works. It doesn't really make any difference. You can do the same concept on both. Okay, so when I click, and I have no idea, let's see, I have to click probably here. Yes. So I just clicked on my right monitor because my right monitor is the normal screen that I would show you. And I will rotate that around again to help you understand what I mean. So now my main screen is showing the slide that I would normally show you, and you can't see it. I'll bring that other one back in a moment. So I'm Eric Greenspan. For those of you that don't know me, I have become a hockey dad recently. For those of you that have kids, if you're thinking about putting them in hockey, prepare to work longer hours. It is an exhausting, expensive sport, and your fingers are always torn up from tying laces. You don't just tie your own kids, you tie everybody's. Anybody who doesn't have a parent or their grandma brought them, you end up tying laces. I'm also a soccer coach, and I run 74 Systems, which is the company that is behind the Ignite program and 74 Web. We also built and run schoolofbookkeeping.com, which is the host of our event today. So real quickly, and I'm going to go ahead and switch back for you so you can see. So on my left monitor, I would normally see this. So I know the first one on the left is what you would normally be seeing, and I know what's coming. And by clicking each time, it'll show me last and next, last or current and next. And that's really helpful as we go. Raise your hand if you want me to keep it in this mode or if you prefer the straight on screen. Hand if you like this mode for a little while. Okay, so it's about half and half. So that I'll keep it here for a little bit and then we'll switch back. Okay. So what I want to share with you in this, and this is important because I want you to understand, I want you to please ask your questions using the Q&A feature inside of the Zoom window. If you can't see this well, double click in the middle and it should blow up, or hit the little thing at the top and maximize it. You should be able to see this perfectly. The Q&A is at the bottom of the window. You click it and you should be able to open it up. The polls are down there, raising your hand is down there, all that stuff. Please use them. Ask your questions as they come to you. It'll make it easier for you in case you forget, because I may not be able to respond. Then we also have a chat, which in chat, it's really more for an open discussion and comments that don't require a response if you don't need me to respond. And please, everyone, vote in the polls regardless of whether you're here for CPE credit or not. CPE is only offered on select live events. We are offering it today. You must vote through to the end, and we will send you your certificates automatically. Okay, so as you can see right here, this little icon I put on the screen for myself, and I'm going to switch it around right now real quick. So you can see this icon showed up, and the reason why is that is my cue to let me know that there's a poll question. So I'm now going to go over and trigger the polls inside of Zoom, which sadly I can't share with you because Zoom hides it on purpose. So I'm going to launch the first poll question, and it is, are you here for CPE credit? Okay, so a lot of you are, awesome, and that's great. Everybody needs to vote, and then we can move forward. So I just launched the poll. That's my little cue. I put it right on the screen. You can put it in your presenter notes, but I like it there, and I like, people get used to it, and I kind of know. And I'm actually going to come up with a version of it that has numbers so I know how many there are when I'm developing. All right, so as we move forward, this is what I do in all of my webinars. Now, you can have something different, and I'll bring all 4 up. For those of you that have been here before, you've seen this, but I ask these 4 questions. And the reason why is because my goals for my webinar are to help you with these things and other things. And I'll talk to you more about goal setting in just a moment. So the first question, are you achieving all your goals? Well, naturally, nobody is ever going to achieve all of them, but we like to set goals and achieve them as we go through life because that gets us excited to wake up in the morning and run to our desk and maybe come and watch a webinar from School of Bookkeeping. And having good clients is not a sin. It's not a curse. It's a wonderful thing. Make sure you do that. It's very important and very valuable. Are you making enough money? I mean, look, hockey and orthodontia. My kid just had one of those appliances put in the roof of his mouth. What a medieval science that is. But I tell you, they're expensive. Don't fear making money. You need it. And make sure you're having some fun. You can tell by the tone of my voice and my approach that I pretty much have fun doing what I do, because doing what you love is critically important for you to be successful in anything. Now, you don't want to necessarily fall in love with your business, but you want to love doing whatever it is you're doing. And when I say don't want to fall in love, and this could be a great webinar for later, is if you have an opportunity to sell it or do something that can bring you a return on investment, falling in love sometimes will keep you from acting accordingly. Okay, so today is a workshop about webinars. You notice that another poll question is popping up right here, and I wanted to go ahead and ask that one now. Did everybody get a chance to respond to the first poll? I'm about to end it. Great. So somebody answered out here, so I don't have to do other work. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to end this one, and then I'm going to start poll question number 2. Now, poll questions are built within the software that runs your webinars, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Okay, so currently, do you do webinars now? And you can select multiple answers here. So I do, or rarely, or I want to. You can, whatever you want. I'm just curious to see. We don't know who answers these, folks, so have fun with it. Please do respond. It'll help us. Okay, so not a lot of people do, so that's cool. That means you're here to learn. Most of you are saying I want to, and that's really cool. So it is a lot to do. It's a lot to get set up, but it's very, very valuable. You know, some of you have just become our client or became our client prior, whether it's at School of Bookkeeping or through the Ignite program or a website or both or all 3. So it really does work. It's a great way to learn somebody and get to know somebody and share your ideas. It's also great about building a brand. Before I go any further, I'm going to introduce a brand new concept that we just announced on schoolofbookkeeping.com. And while this is partly a sales pitch, I also think it's the perfect, absolute perfect segue from a workshop about webinars to talk about what we just created, and they're called WOWbinars. And a webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the presenter notes piece. So again, this is what you normally don't see in a webinar. This is on my left screen. I've got it here for you now because I want you to see it, because that's what we're doing today, right? So I have little notes down here, and the notes are, I want to mention to you that these are just little tiny webinars, right? Not like what we're doing today, long-winded Eric Greenspan for 50 minutes just for CPE. You know, I mean, it's like the scene in Airplane, right? Where he's pouring gasoline over himself and about to light a match. I hope not. These are never live. They're just little tiny recorded snippets. and they're hot topics, things that really matter right now, you know, things that are bugging people and things that are exciting, hopefully, and allow you to get back to work, take the knowledge with you and go. And that's really the purpose of a webinar. And we created them because we want to create more content and we want to give you something that we think is also very valuable. So webinars, same concept, but they're not live and they're very, very small. All right, so let's start with hardware. And here I think I will rotate us back. I have to go 3 times because I have 3 of my 4 monitors on. All right, so first of all, obviously you have to have a computer, and whether it's a Mac or a PC, you want it to be robust. You want it to be a decent machine. I run a Mac Cylinder, it's the Mac Pro. It's extremely powerful. It's got a ton of memory. It's got great video. And what I want to share with you right now is I have 2 4K displays on the left and the right. And the one in the middle is a 2K display. And it's interesting because 2K meaning that it's a lot lower resolution, but it's still super high. It's probably more than most people use, even at 2K. It's a 2560 by 1440 resolution, which is, kind of think of it as a little bit more than 1080p, like your televisions and HD TVs. It's in between that and the 4Ks. But what's really important here is that I'm downsizing my monitor that I do my webinars and workshops on. The main display monitor where we do our recording, we're only recording 1 screen of the 3, is the smaller one. I've got these 2 really fancy displays out here that are 4K, but yet I use this older 2K model because the reason why is for bandwidth issues. We don't need 4K. It's cool. I've got a 4K camera, webcam, and I've got a lot of bandwidth, but I got to tell you something, folks. You don't need 4K. You do need a good quality computer that's got enough memory, and you need a decent display. Now, somebody just jumped on, that's a client of mine who understands the Mac Pro very well, the MacBook Pro. That's a wonderful machine. I personally don't like using my MacBook Pro to do webinars because I don't like the screen resolution. I plug in a monitor to it if I had to, but I use a different device. So you'll want to find one that fits both the PC, the Mac, whatever it is, and whether you're going to do it from a laptop or connect a monitor, find a display that you like, test it, work with it, and figure out something that makes sense. And don't go crazy because remember, at the end of the day, you got to put this thing up on YouTube or Vimeo. And if it's too big, meaning if you have a big giant 4K display and you have huge resolution, the file is going to be ginormous. Your editing time is going to be so much longer. Your uploading time will be so much longer. As it is, I upload these things at 1920 by 1080, which is 1080p, and it's huge. I wouldn't want to do that on anything but decent hardware. And as far as a webcam goes, the Logitech 920, it literally is perfect in almost every way. I've got like 4 of them. I've got the new Brio 4K, but it doesn't do anything more. This thing's great. Now, for some reason, Apple doesn't put very good cameras in their machines for the forward-facing ones, although new iMac will. Some of the PCs out there do. Do make sure you have a 1080p webcam, whatever it is. Do make sure you have 1080p, not 720. And then probably the most important, and this is, I put it on the hardware page, but this is a test that I ran this morning off of my laptop wirelessly. Now I'm plugged in on Ethernet right now, but wirelessly, I got 343 megabits per second with a 16 millisecond ping time. My upload's probably about 33. If you're not over 100, you should be concerned. And that's harder to do in an office than in a home office. But trust me when I tell you folks, you need speed. If you can plug in, great. If you can't, be near your wireless. If your wireless has interference, get it fixed. Don't be subject to slow bandwidth issues. If you're doing a remote session with a client and it's sluggish, make it their fault always, never yours. All right, now software, we're going to talk a little bit about different apps that we use. You know, I'm going to guess that most of you don't use Zoom. How many use Zoom? Raise your hand if you use Zoom, please. Couple. Okay. Raise your hand if you use GoToMeeting or Join Me, either one. Yeah. How about WebEx? I think I have a question coming up on this. So Zoom is by far the best. There's no question in my mind. JoinMe and GoToMeeting are the same company now. They're here in Santa Barbara, where we're from. I know the company well. Citrix Online used to be Expert City. I was in the Super Friends group with one of the founders. I speak with them. They were a sponsor. I mean, I know that product inside and out. Compared to Zoom, doesn't hold a candle in my opinion. Try Zoom. It's easy. It's reasonably inexpensive. But the thing that I want to make sure you understand is what's important for you is that you can capture the attendee data. You can reasonably operate the software. And you want to have some sort of integrations. Both of these do a pretty good job. What I love about Zoom is how well it works with Acuity scheduling on a WordPress site. And for those of you that have booked an appointment, you know how great that is. We have other webinars on that topic. So Zoom is a great piece of software for this. And the key is when you do webinar, you need the webinar add-on. What is that? Okay, so Zoom meetings allows you to do a one-on-one or up to, I think, 50 or maybe even 100 now windows where you're actually having a discussion with other people. But if you want to control a webinar where you have people sign up and they have to go through the registration process and you can control panelists and all the variety of things that you do with polling and all the things that we need to do and have a large audience, you need to add the webinar piece to Zoom. So Zoom meetings is X, you need to add Y, which is their webinar add-on. That's what we're using here today. As far as software goes, pick your pleasure. If it's Mac, Keynote is awesome. If it's not, PowerPoint is great. You can use PowerPoint on both. It doesn't really matter. I think Keynote is just slick. I think it's way cooler. I can edit it on my iPad, my iPhone. It goes with me everywhere I go, and it just works. Now, these aren't required, but they certainly are going to make your life easier. And first, I'm going to talk about Insightly just in general. Insightly is a CRM. If you have a CRM, you know what I'm talking about here, right? You know what I mean about bringing data in. Well, if you're using your webinars to bring in new prospects, you need a way to get that data into something that you can actually capture them and use them. And then use something like MailChimp, which is the monkey in the middle there, to disseminate information or to, reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for attending. I'd like to make you my customer now. I mean, that's what this is about, right? We're here for business. Adobe Illustrator is just an example. For those of you that don't have the skills or a graphics design department or aren't working with us, go to Canva. We did a webinar on that recently, and I think I have a link for it coming up. I'll share it in the chat when I do how to make your images. But Illustrator preferred over Photoshop. Photoshop is for editing photos. When you want to create stuff, I would recommend using Illustrator. And then, or Canva if it's just not for you, or hire somebody to do it. But you got to create graphics. You got to have images. You got to have stuff, right? Look at what we've got on the screen. Now, everything you see here is borrowed, right? These are images that I've grabbed off the web. And one of my favorite little tricks, and I'll share it with you, is to search the company name and then put brand assets. Company name, so Insightly brand assets. And you will see, usually they will give you their downloadable zip file of all of their assets if you needed them for some reason. Not every company has them, and sometimes you have to grab others. But you also want to read the licensing information and see if you're allowed to use them. And then Zapier is just an awesome tool. I'm not going to talk about it here, but go check out the 2 webinars that we just did. And one is how to write Zap, just using a simple example. And then one is a specific automation Zap that takes a Stripe transaction, breaks out the transaction fee, and puts those into 2 separate line items into QuickBooks Online. It's ridiculous. Okay, so when you're getting ready to do a webinar, you've got to set a purpose. And this is not your goal. This is before the goal. First, you set a purpose. And the purpose is, are you doing this to gather new clients? Are you doing this because you want to make money directly by selling access? Are you doing this because you want to build your brand? I mean, what is the purpose of investing all this time and energy into building a webinar, you have to know that from the outset. If it's just because it's fun or you want to experience it, whatever, it doesn't matter. Set your purpose and then set a goal. So if it is a monetary goal, and whether that's immediate, meaning you sell the webinar, or it's something down the road that's going to return on investment. So for example, I'm creating content right now for schoolofbookkeeping.com's recorded library. You're here, a lot of you, and you're watching this presentation. So you're getting benefit as a potential or existing client of schoolofbookkeeping.com. And in addition to that, it's helping our brand spread and offer our other services through the Ignite program. So that's my goal of doing a webinar. I mean, you know it, right? It's also, could it be for growth? Sure, to grow schoolofbookkeeping.com. Every time we do a webinar Wednesday, we get new signups. You know, are you looking just to stroke your ego? Do you want to get a lot of attendees? Maybe you want those attendees to go like your pages and your other social media. That's good, right? That all leads to other things. And then maybe it's survey results. Maybe you want to find out if you're any good at it. You know, there was the latest Star Trek Discovery episode, sorry, I can't help it, you know, where the guy, he did a little survey on himself to find out if he's a good captain. And then he didn't want to know the results at the end because he knew he was. We all have egos. We have to deal with it. Sorry if I blew that for you, folks. You might not care. So once you've figured out the purpose and then set an official goal for it, now you've got to find a topic, and that can be challenging. I have had my share of interesting topics. I've had a webinar that I promoted once. I won't even mention it. And I could not, for the life of me, get people to register for it. And I never understood why. And I probably could have changed the title or changed the image and it would have blown up, because I think it was a good idea. But finding a topic, first of all, it needs to be relevant, right? I mean, if it's not relevant, why bother? And relevant to who? Your audience, right? And relevant in a way that it's going to draw them in and want them to ask questions or to be a part of your group. Like, I've got people here that are on a free trial. I want you to say, wow, that was a great webinar. I want more of those, and I want to be able to watch that again. And I want my employees to be able to watch that. That was really useful stuff. So the topic, a workshop about webinars, is obviously very popular. So was Transaction Pro, believe it or not. You just never know what might hit. And then you have to know your topic. If I were to get up here and do a Drake webinar, I would be in a lot of trouble. But I know a couple of people on this call that would jump in with me and could help me do it as partners. So you can partner with other people and share the responsibility. And I'm hinting that we may want to do something like that very soon. And you also have to enjoy the presentation. I'm not going to say that all presentations that are useful are fun. But I mean, let's face it, you know, if you're not into it, if you don't really care about it, if you have no passion behind it, it's just going to come out blah. You know, even Drake can be interesting if you present it in a way that's, you know, cool. And there's that, interesting. You've got to find relevancy and interest. People have to be interested. So here's a really cool idea that I do with my clients, and I do with my colleague, Angela, who's also my fiance. So whenever we need groceries, we typically say, Alexa, add eggs to the shopping list.
I added eggs to your shopping list.
So there are now eggs on my shopping list, which is now on a product called AnyList, because they have a skill with the device, I can't say her name again, that automatically syncs. And this AnyList tool is a tool that, by putting that on there, if Angela were at the grocery store today, she would automatically see that I just added eggs. And this is how we shop, and it works great. And this is the one thing that Amazon device does really, really well. And I think we would miss it if we didn't have it, because when you're standing at the fridge, well, take that same logic and apply it towards a webinar idea. Now, you could very easily, there's a to-do list on there, or you can add it to a different list or whatever, but you can very easily, and you don't need her to do it, is bring up a list app, maybe Wunderlist or I like AnyList, because it's just really cool with the grocery feature. But make a list of ideas that come to you when they come to you and just build it and share that list with other people in your organization and your life so they can contribute or comment. You know, topic, you can even do a Facebook group. Okay. Angela, please make a note. We need a Facebook group on creating great topics for our members. Things that we can discuss. They come there just to tell us whether or not we're approaching what we're doing properly. What a great feedback system to let us know what they want on schoolofbookkeeping.com next, right? Okay, so see, that just stimulated an idea for me. Make a list, share it, build it, and then pick your best topics. All right. So now that you've got your topic, you've got to create the event. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you, there's a little trick, is on Keynote on the Mac, and I don't know how to do this on PowerPoint, but just Google it and find out, or I can find out for you, is I hit H. And when I hit H, you can see my screen hid the Keynote presentation and showed my desktop, which allows me to go and open up Chrome so that I can now do a demonstration for you. That's a really cool feature. I didn't have to cancel out of Keynote. I didn't have to do anything really. I just hit H and here I am. And what I'm going to do, I need to bring back Keynote for just a second so I can see my notes. And let me flip around real quick so you guys can see. Okay, so my notes are demo, set up event, create a webinar. Oh no, this, okay, I'm gonna create a webinar called this. Okay? Oops. And I've got to bring this back around for it to work. And then I hit H. Okay. So I'm going to go to a previous webinar and I'm going to click on it. And this is a great thing in Zoom. And I can click schedule the same webinar based on this one. And this one I'm going to call Creating a Webinar, a behind the scenes look at how we produce recorded events. And you guys are going to like this because it's going to be kind of that Camtasia thing. What do I do when I'm done with this particular presentation? Well, that's a whole nother workshop in itself. And this will give you kind of an insight on how we do that, but from just a pure recording standpoint rather than going live to record it. I can write a description if I want to. I don't need to. I can pick a date, and I know that I chose November 15th was available at 11 a.m. And I'm going to make it 1 hour, and registration is required. And then I'm going to click save. I'm going to click Google Calendar. I'm going to log in. I'm going to save it to my calendar. And now I am officially done. That's it. I created the webinar called Creating a Webinar. Now, this is the name of it. And now I have to go create that on my website. And to do that, I'm going to go to WordPress. And this is not something that you're going to be able to do, but I figured I'd just show you real quickly how I do it. And I'll put this name in here. And then I'll click Format, Webinar, Live Broadcast Date, Matches the 15th. Now this is stuff I've set up ahead of time. And this stuff we do for our clients, pretty cool. These are custom fields. And by populating all of this stuff, this is for CPE, participants will learn how to create a recorded video, AKA webinar, for their own website and social media. And then there's no guest, and I'll put 1 credit of CPE, and everything else fills in automatically. Now, when I click Save This Draft, it's going to go ahead and automatically add a blank image. I've set that up in advance, and then it's going to go ahead and do all of its stuff, and I can go and I can update it and publish it. But by saving it now and putting it there and getting it ready, I now have it and I can finish it up later. Everybody does this differently, but when you guys come to School of Bookkeeping and you see these events and you see all this stuff populated, that's how I do it. Now, this event is about to end. When this event does end, I'm going to take you through editing this workshop that you clicked on to register and turning it into a recorded event in just a few clicks. Now, this again is something that isn't just going to come out of the box, but I want to give you a bird's eye view on how we do it. So the event is created in Zoom. It's a draft set up here. It's on my calendar. I'm going to go back to Keynote now. I've created the event. And I promised you earlier that I would, I don't know if I can, trying to click on. So let me see if I can get it from here. So the notes, yeah, there we go. So this is what I want you to see. And I'm going to put this in chat for you to make it easy. So this is the other webinar that we did. It's in our recorded library that will help you build the images using either Illustrator or Canva, which is the non-expert version. That's a great little webinar for that. People have enjoyed it. Now, notice that I'm using my webinar to promote other webinars and other services and other tools. I mean, everything I'm doing is what I do. It's what I do for a living, and it's useful stuff. That's why we're always so busy. And that's, you know, part of it. Same thing in your practice. It's the same concept. Let me go back to our main screen. Okay, so we've created the event. You now have a link to that other webinar that you can watch later. And now let's talk about marketing the event, okay? Now, in this one, I'm going to show you a little bit more about how we share the event that we're currently working on. And then we can talk a little bit about pay-per-click and stuff like that, but not necessarily. So this is the event that we're currently promoting, right? This is the event that we're at today. But I don't really want to deal with that one because that one's over. Once I turn it into a recorded version, then I can market that. But let's talk about the value of partnering, which is our next event, which I'd love for you all to come to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit this event, and I'm going to show you something pretty neat. So this is the behind the scenes stuff. And right here is a little plugin from a product that we use called CoSchedule. And CoSchedule is a great little tool that allows us to share the content from this particular post, which in this case is an event, to all of our social media with just one click. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to say I want to share this tomorrow, and I'll pick all my profiles. In this case, there's 8. And then you're going to see what it looks like down here. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the excerpt. So this is what people are going to see. So I'm going to format this until it kind of lays out nicely. You can see now it's got spaces. And I don't see that it's showing the image properly. So I'm going to go ahead and add an image. This is pick your partners wisely. So that's going to be in webinars, thumbs. How to, sorry, bear with me a second. Partners. How did I miss it? So the event is called, let me look real quick. The value of partnering. Okay, so let me try it again. The value of partnering. So SOB, webinars, thumbs. You can see how I lay my things out. The value of partnering. There it is. And I will upload that image as the main image for this, and you'll see it'll populate here. Just a couple of clicks and I'm done. Now watch what happens. This is really cool. So this is a preview of what you're going to see on Abo. And I'm going to click this little button here, which is Requeue, and it's going to automatically fill in on days when I don't have any published content. It'll automatically show this again, but only once per month. And what's good about that is because after this event is gone from live to recorded, I want people to see the recorded version. So I'm just going to click Add Message, and I'm done. So I now just shared that to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, pages, groups, whatever, in just a couple of clicks. That's pretty neat. And then if you go look in Abo, we've got different things, but if you look at this one in particular, like this came from the same thing. This is one of the shares that I did in CoSchedule. So you can see that how it populates in Abo and how the image shows and so on and so forth. And we're back to our presentation. So marketing the event is sharing it through social media. Then there's also your mailing list. And something that I want to make sure you know about that is it's really important that you continue to use email. And one of the things that's really important about using email is making sure you have an opt-in on your website. If people opt in, we get so many opt-ins every day, and that's how we market. And when we market to people that have opted in on our website, they want our information, they respond, they show up to our events, and we get a lot of people coming to a webinar like this, signing up for our services, and then maybe even booking an almost free consultation with me for 74 systems for the Ignite program. This is very important. We've talked about it before. I'm not going to do it here. We did do a webinar on this. It's in the recorded events. It's very, very important that you make sure that this is working properly and that you can track it properly and you know what the opt-ins are coming from so that you can get some kind of value from your response. And then it's really important as people come in, and I'm not going to tell you who's here right now because that wouldn't be right, but I can tell you who registered. I can tell you who showed up, how long they stayed. All of that stuff is inside a Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever. But more importantly, I like to put that type of stuff into my CRM, and I've obviously obfuscated this so that you can't see it. You might see the first letter of your name in there, but this is just the first 16 that I'm showing from just this week. There's a lot more. This is not just necessarily people on this webinar, but this is the first 16 of this week's leads. And I basically can tell you where they came from. In essence, did they come from this webinar or a different one, or did they just show up on the website and opt in and whatever? And this is how we track our leads, and then we can communicate to them, reach out to them, invite them to other events, follow up, so on and so forth. Very important. This is Insightly. And by the way, this is the new view, which some of you, if you're using Insightly, will say, wow, that looks different. It does. It takes a little time to learn, but it is so much more powerful than before. So now you got to create the presentation. Let me switch this real quick. So there's a screenshot of what it would look like if I were creating the presentation right now. And that's what I see. So you can see my slides on the left here in Keynote, very similar to PowerPoint. You can see my notes at the bottom, which you may use just for development, or you may use publicly if you need them, if you want to have them, or not publicly, but on your other display. And this is really important because as you lay out the presentation, you'll start to learn what's missing or what might be important. You know, just before, a few of you were here early, just before this presentation started, I realized that I missed a slide for production. In fact, perfect example. It's not here. You'll see run the event, follow up, and then it goes to the end. But that's not how this presentation is going to go. It's going to go run the event, and then it's going to go to something else. So you can see here, it's going to run the event, which I'll go ahead and click on. So now you run your event, and you're about to see a bunch of slides that weren't in there because I added them last minute. And I did this live for all of you, and I'll put it in the recording so that you can see it if you weren't here early. And the reason we did it, obviously, is because you're always changing. You're always making this thing a little bit better. All right, so in my notes, I wrote, when it's time to run the event, get ready, prepare yourself. Now, the next slide is going to say this, but I'm going to mention it on this slide, and then I'm going to show it to you again. I actually had it on there 3 times, and then I realized that was a bit much. Disable notifications is so important, and whether it's a Windows machine or a Mac, they both have it. You must disable any pop-ups or notifications or nonsense that's going to pop up in the middle of your presentation. It's just bad stuff. On the Mac, you can do it very quickly with one switch. On Windows, you have to go into settings and click, click, and it's done. So make sure you do that. The other thing, and I've done this before, is if you forget to hit the click to record, set up all your webinars to automatically record. Because even if you start a few minutes early, who cares? At the end of the day, don't make that mistake. I once had to go back and do the first 15 minutes of a webinar manually after the event because I started the recording 15 minutes in it. Go behind the scenes and open up all your necessary apps and tabs. You noticed when I switched to Google Chrome, I had all my tabs already open, ready to show you. That's very important. Learn your tools. You know, the toggle between screens that I'm doing right now and, you know, clicking on H and knowing how to edit these things so that I can remove whether I have slideshow here or I have, you know, current and next, all that stuff. Get to know how your tools work. There's this funny little thing in Keynote where if you don't click it, there's no mouse pointer that shows up on the screen in the middle of your presentation because it, you know, it gets in the way. People don't want to see the mouse pointer. Well, too bad. I do. It drives me nuts. I feel like I can't use my computer. I'm working blind. So I click this little button that says show mouse pointer. Silly little thing. There's another one that says end presentation automatically at the end. Go back to the edit screen. I don't want that to happen. I want it to stay at my final slide. So learn your tools, check your setups, open and close, learn the tricks, Google, you know, some handy tips. It's H to hide the keynote. I'm sure there's a letter like that or a command key in PowerPoint. Very cool stuff. And if you make a mistake, like, oops, I went backwards. So what? Oops, I went backwards. Now I'm going to go forward. Just keep moving on. You can always edit that out of the recording. What makes live interesting is when it's a little bit imperfect. Obviously, you don't want to make a lot of mistakes. And if you are, you'll learn, you'll grow. See, if you make mistakes, laugh at yourself. All right, let me bring us back to my full screen. Oh, did I mention to disable notifications? Did I mention to record the event? So follow-up is probably more important than any part of producing a webinar. And yet it's probably the least tackled, particularly in this industry. A lot of people will go through the pain of putting together an event and they've got all these people that registered or showed up. And by the way, not a single person has dropped off. And when I see that, that means what I'm presenting is working. When I see a lot of people drop off, and I rarely do, but I have, then I know I need to change what I'm talking about or pick up the pace or whatever. So keep an eye on that, by the way. That's a great tip. Watch your attendees. Follow-up is key, folks. Remember this screen earlier? If we don't go out, if I don't reach out to all of you, now here's the funny thing, is if you're here, you probably have already gotten a follow-up email from me. And if you haven't, you will automatically because I set up all that stuff ahead of time. It's what I do for our clients. We have auto follow-ups that go into MailChimp automation. Very, very important because one of you is going to become our next Ignite client. I'm sure of it. It always happens. Now, remember I said earlier that I didn't have these slides in there? This is something I remembered right at the end. It was like, whoa, wait a minute, Eric, you can't ask them to market the recording, which is the next slide, if you don't produce the recording. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna or not. I may do a new webinar called How to Create a Recorded Event in using Camtasia. I have one that's similar. I think the webinar one will get the point across, but producing the recording, you can either outsource this or you can just not care. I like to do it. And let me just show you real quickly. So this is Camtasia. And what I love about this tool is I'm going to bring up a project that I worked on yesterday. And it's this how to automatically create a multiple. Okay, so watch this. So I'm going to just show you briefly. So this is what I do when I create, let me get rid of that background. Okay, so this is, let's say this is our webinar today. I create these bumpers in the beginning. In today's webinar? So this webinar is available for you up on schoolofbookkeeping.com. This is how we produce it. Now, there's some stuff in here that I didn't want you to see, so I blurred it, I obfuscated it. There's some stuff I wanted to highlight, so I put square or rectangles around it. There's some pointers showing you particular parts of this thing. So as this thing runs through, you can see how it does the video, and then it ends with another bumper. So that is the basic overview of how that works. Isn't it cool? It says 74% right there. I didn't do that on purpose. For producing Camtasia, but I'm going to take today's recording, chop off the beginning and end parts that don't matter, bump out the stuff that I didn't like, and I'm gonna fit it in between two bumpers, different bumpers, and then fix it up and make it do things that I want it to do, save it, and post it up to our website. Pretty cool stuff. After you produce it, you've got to market it. Now, I'm not going to do this again for you because I just did it, but this is the same thing. Actually, I am going to do this. I'm going to do one thing. Let me show you something cool. So this is what I promised to do for you earlier, and I will finish it. Okay, so here is today's webinar. It says register. Notice it's on upcoming live events. I won't have to do this afterwards. This is so cool. I'm so happy right now. Okay, so I'm going to change it from a workshop live to a workshop recorded. And those categories I've set up so that when I do that, it will no longer show under upcoming live events, but it will show up now in our recorded events. The problem is it's still going, here it is. So just by clicking that toggle, and I've set that up so that it displays this category on this page and the other category on a different page. So by changing that category, I now can go in here and edit this real quick, and I've got templates set up. I don't have to make a single change other than adding the video embed code. So I'm gonna delete all of this, add my little template, and this is in my website, recorded event, and now I'm gonna save it, and when you open it, it's gonna say this instead of book here or register now. Now, once I produce my video, I'll put that video into this little box right here and the podcast, save it again, and it'll appear something more like this. So you'll see the video. This one I haven't done the podcast yet. Let me show you one that has one. You don't have to do a podcast, by the way. It's just the audio version that I do. So here's the podcast version, just audio. And that's very simple. When you make a video, you just save the audio. You just skip the video. So it's hard to go from audio to video. You can go from video to audio. It's a little joke. So both of those are in there now. It automatically populates this data based on the content from before. Everything's good. It changes it from register to this has already occurred, and I'm done. I mean, that's really it. I've set that stuff up ahead of time. Can we do that for you? Oh, yes. So that's a workshop about webinars. I've got another poll question for you here. I think you guys kind of answered this already. Okay, so there I did. I just did it. I just made that silly mistake that I mentioned. So poll number 3. I'm just curious if we get you to check real quick which of these tools you're currently using. Yeah, GoToMeeting always wins. It's time to move away from that tool, folks, but it's nice to see Zoom is number 2 now. Best tool out there. Okay. So real quick, new content in WOWbinars. We've got how to automatically create a multiple line item sales receipt in QuickBooks Online and include the merchant fees on a separate line. Very cool. And just a real simple one to show you how Zapier works. So that's just launching yesterday and we're excited about it. And then on Radio Ignite, we've got 3 new episodes, Never Stop Innovating. These are just a couple minutes of inspirational stuff that I like to do. I think you'll enjoy them. So check out those things. Coming up next, as you saw, is the value of partnering. Pick your partners wisely. Now, one of the things that's really crazy about building a webinar is, for one, I just went through a lot of content. You can go back and watch it again in the recording so that you can get it all because you're going to miss some of it. But I can also promote my next event, continue to build my business. And what's really cool is at 11:50, I can say, Thanks for coming. Here's your final poll question, and have a nice day. So normally when we start our webinars, we do a little behind the scenes stuff and just talk about things. But today, since this is a webinar or a workshop about webinars or a webinar about webinars, we're actually going to start a little bit differently. So just bear with me as I get this thing going and pay attention to what I'm doing now, because this is part of it. This is the pre-setup portion. I normally have my clock on because I have the screen showing, but I don't today, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that separately. Okay, mark it. Recording. We need one more slide. Okay, as you're joining, folks, just to give you a quick heads up, I am doing the not so typical part of what we do here. We're actually recording this part. I'm actually going to include this in the recording because this is a webinar about webinars, or a workshop as we call it. But in this case, you're getting to see the behind the scenes work as I get ready for a webinar. Normally I don't show this, but I am today. And I'm going to basically show you a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. For those of you that know, you'll appreciate it. And for those of you that don't, I think you will learn something. Okay, so I'm just about set in terms of my presentation. What I'm going to be sharing will be here later. It would be nice to turn off any kind of communications on Facebook, but I don't even know if that's possible. My notifications are turned off. I am recording. My poll questions are created. I'm seeing people. I confirm that you can hear and see me. So far, so good. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, and I'm going to start our presentation as such. Okay. So on my main screen, you see an image. What you can't see is that I can view who's on. I see the chat, and I have the Q&A. So it's kind of a cool thing because when you have multiple monitors, they really come in handy when it comes to doing a presentation. So just to give you all a heads up, is anybody here a Mac user? Raise your hand if you're a Mac user. We have not started yet. We'll start at 11 o'clock. This is our preamble, as we call it. Okay, so we've got one Mac user, and I'm just going to tell you the new High Sierra product, if you are concerned about your upgrade, don't do it. It's the first time I've ever said that. You know, it's interesting when Windows or Apple Mac OS have updates, a lot of people jump to it. And I'm one of them. I'm usually a beta tester, and I was with this product, but not on my core workstation. I've got one of those Mac Pro cylinders. And I upgraded my laptop because I can play with it but not my cylinder. And I have been in Mac jail for a while. So if for some reason today's presentation crashes in the middle, I'll be back. Just sit tight. It'll be I wish I could record that. I don't think I can though. Once it crashes, it's gone. It's not going to though. It's going to stay stable. I can feel it. So latest and greatest in technology. Anybody have anything to share? Any new gadgets you have? Anybody get a new iPhone 8 or the new latest and greatest Samsung device? I got the iPhone 8 Plus. It's just a better version of the 7 with wireless charging. It's not overwhelmingly exciting. I got it so I could learn it as I do because it's part of my role in life. I will get a 10, but I hear they're very limited. In addition to that, there are a lot of great new home automation pieces coming out. We just launched a new webinar about it. So I'm excited about that one as well. We're about a minute and a half out and people are starting to show up. Everybody see and hear okay? You should be able to see a screen that says a workshop about webinars. Raise your hand if you're good. Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As people arrive, I'll share some other tidbits of technology with you. I'm particularly excited about the latest Amazon device, the new Echo. Stop. I have one that responds to that word. The latest one actually has a built-in HomeKit enabled hub, which I'm very excited about because we've got 4 or 5 different hubs in this house that operate all of our home automation, 156 smart devices. And that one hub from Amazon is going to make a huge difference in the ease of use and management of this network. And I'll be in a lot less trouble. Have you seen the Geico commercial where they talk about the home automation assistant, and she says that she asks what time the gym closes, and he says, order gym clothes, and she says, no, don't call the gym, and she calls some guy named Jim, and it's just such a fiasco. Okay, I'm gonna go quiet for 20 seconds, and then we'll start.